Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode number 9 of the Camera Shake podcast with Nick Kirby and me, Kersten Nuts, the photo and video podcast coming at you straight out of isolation into your eardrums. We'll be talking about photographers' lives in lockdown, what's happening in the world outside, and if we're lucky, we'll hit on photography too. But before we get started, please throw us a solid and subscribe to this podcast. And if listening to our super smooth voices isn't enough for you, you can check us out in glorious Technicolor over on YouTube. Without further ado, I want to introduce you to our guest for today's episode. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Abul Shah, wedding photographer par excellence. How are you doing, Abul? You okay?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on the show. Love what you guys are doing, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. So, Abul, I heard about you, or heard about your story through a friend of ours, if you want. And I was immediately intrigued because, of course, on this podcast, we love to talk to people who have a great kind of backstory and, and have something very interesting and inspirational to say. So, with all the lockdown and everything that's going on, and of course, we're going to talk about that as well. But first, I'd really like to talk to you about your past, if you want. So why don't you tell us, in your own words, how you got started in photography in the first place?
I've always enjoyed photography, but I never really thought I could make an income from photography. But I was living in Canada for 5 years, and I decided to move back to the UK. And it was when moving back to the UK, I decided, having done my first wedding in Canada, I decided that I really wanted to pursue this passion of mine in photography and pursue my dream of being a wedding photographer. And as soon as I got back to the UK, I took a year out and I just focused everything I did and all my time on my creating a business, on improving my composition, and just trying to build myself a wedding photography business and establish myself here.
So when you did the very first wedding shoot in Canada, had you already been working as a professional photographer, or was that, how did that shoot go down for you?
So that was a family friend of mine. So at that point, I wasn't a professional photographer, although I had done some press photography before my first wedding. Probably one of my biggest jobs was I photographed the Indian International Film Awards in Toronto. And a little brag coming up, which I don't normally do, but I was one of the only photographers on the green carpet, which is what they call the red carpet in the Bollywood industry, which was really cool. So I was keeping myself busy. I was just really sharing my stuff online, and wedding photography wasn't really on my radar. And then a family friend of mine asked if I would photograph her wedding. And I was just over the moon because I felt that she must have seen something in my work that she was really, happy with and wanted me to photograph her wedding.
Yeah.
And I was just completely honored and so grateful. Fast forward 24 hours later, the nerves hit me and I was like, oh my goodness, what have I just agreed to do? So I think over the next few weeks and then, the months before the wedding, I just, really stuck my head in the, in YouTube videos and photography books and just, became obsessive. And
that's so funny because I remember exactly having the exact same experience. It was like exactly the same. I mean, the first time I shot a wedding, and I don't do many weddings here. I do it very, very occasionally, but it was the same thing. A family friend asked me to shoot their wedding, and and I of course said yes. And then the very next thing is like, man, what if I screw that up? That's a special day.
Right? Yeah.
No way.
Weddings have a certain amount of pressure themselves, which, we all know. But that being my first wedding, what was so overwhelming for me was that she was actually a professional model, like doing a lot of catwalk stuff in Toronto. And, she was amazing. So knowing that she had close friends and had a strong network of people in the industry that she could have asked, but she chose to come to me. When the nerves hit, they hit hard, and I was like super nervous. But the wedding was amazing. I got some amazing photos. She was happy, and I really just got the wedding bug.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
Wow.
So that's where, that was my first wedding and went really well.
So
and
cool.
here I am.
Apple, what, not being, photography is kind of second to videography for myself. And so I haven't actually photographed a wedding previously. But a friend of mine asked me to do it this summer. Now that's been delayed until next year because of the COVID situation that's going on. So I haven't had chance yet for those nerves to kick in. And, Kirsten just said it a second ago, what if I ruin their special day and all of that? And so what advice would you give me for in the lead up to their wedding?
I'd say have fun on the day. I think what's important, if you think about it from the client perspective, whether they're friends or, a paying client, I think it's really important to remember their perspective. It's their wedding day. They're going to have a lot of stress on the day, on the morning. The anxiety is going to be really high. So they're not going to need a photographer to come in and be all, nervous and anxious. And I've been there, believe me, and adding to their stress and the dramas of the wedding day. What they really want is they want someone who's just going to be competent, who's going to be enjoying what they're doing, who's going to be relaxed, having fun with it. And that's going to help relax them to get the photos that they want from you. Yeah. So my secret is just have fun on the day. Dance on the dance floor, man. Have fun with the guests. Go around, greet everyone as soon as you arrive, without the camera. Talk to the parents, be respectful and polite to everybody, and just have fun. And that goes a long way.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting you say that, because I guess that then applies to everything. Because I play in a function band as well as I'm a bass player.
Fellow musician. So, cool.
Yeah. What do you play?
Guitar as well.
Oh,
I know
great.
Kersten is a cool guitarist. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a story for another day, but me and Kersten have this other kind of connection that we never knew about, that we found out about last year, which is very odd. Well, our drummer to my band has played in another band with Kersten when he depped for them once.
Wow, small world.
Very small, very small. Yeah. But so I'm used to that kind of pressure, going in and, you're the only entertainment for the evening. That kind of, it's very interesting to hear you say that, have fun with them on the day, because that's exactly what we try and do in a function band. It's universal. I love it.
Absolutely. And you find that when you're in a place filled with anxiety and stress, like, you can't think as creatively as you would when you're free and when you're calm and centered, because then you're going to want to try things out. Whereas when you're so anxious, you've got these blinkers on where you're thinking, okay, I got to get this job done. Let me get this job done. And I've got to get this done at this time and, make sure it's all good. But when you're relaxed and you're calm and you're centered, then, you can kind of flow a little more around and have fun with it and try different things. So it works in so many ways. So, just have fun.
Yeah. Abul, have you ever shot a wedding on film?
Oh, I introduced film to my wedding workflow for the first time last year, actually. And one of my little secrets now that I'm sharing for the first time is one of my goals for this year was to introduce film photography to my wedding business and become a hybrid wedding photographer. It hasn't quite happened with this pandemic and this lockdown. A couple of my goals have been set back, but that's one of my goals I'm currently working on.
Well, this is like my ultimate nightmare.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I always think like, if you shoot a wedding on film, somebody asks you like, did you get the first kiss? And you go, I hope so. Did you get the first dance? I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, and of course it's ridiculous really, because not too long ago, everybody was shooting on film and, it was fine. You know what I mean? But it's just one of these things where I'm thinking like, oh my God, like with all the other pressures, of course, if it's, as always, if it's not something that you're really used to and you're confident, and you're comfortable with, then those anxieties just get amplified when you're in that situation. And I have to say, I mean, I've probably shot like a handful of weddings, and it's gotten, I mean, every time it was a little bit easier. It got a little bit easier, But like that's actually an area of photography really I would like to just get a lot more experience under my belt. It's not really something. Normally, what I do, I'm in a very controlled environment usually, unless I'm shooting concerts, which I do a lot of as well. But having been a musician for I don't know 30 years nearly, I'm also very comfortable with that situation. So there's really not there's not a lot that kind of phases me in that. And when I'm in a studio or I do headshots or I do corporate work and I'm in a controlled environment, I control the environment. But in a wedding situation, it always seems to me like, you got to really be super flexible and deal with whatever gets thrown at you. Is that right?
Absolutely. I think what I try to do with wedding photography is I approach it from mostly a journalistic perspective. Although, so I tell my brides when I meet them for my, first consultations or for my initial meetings, that my work is like 90% natural and then 10% directed to help them get the photos they want. Because I think on the wedding day, I want to tell the story. I want to capture what's happening. I want them to remember them, on their wedding day, not being directed, throughout the whole 13, 14 hours of the wedding day, to do what the photographer wanted to do. I just want to really capture the narrative of the day, the story of the day, and the guests having fun and the bride and groom having fun with the guests. So I think that's what's really important to me. And that's, been working out really well for me too. In terms of, being fearful of, introducing film to weddings, man, some of my favorite photographers in the world are the classic masters like, Elliot Erwitt, Henry Cartier-Bresson.
Yeah.
They rocked film, man. And even now, by our standards, they are just legendary.
Absolutely.
So when I hear, when the Nikon released their new mirrorless camera and Canon did as well, and there was the single card slot, and I heard people just screaming about the single card slot, I just thought to myself, that's just fear talking. And
yeah, for sure.
Them calling it, an unprofessional camera body or non-professional camera body. I thought to myself, wow, if you put that in the hands of someone like one of the classic masters, they wouldn't be fearful that it's only got one camera slot. They would make the most of that and get the photos that they want without, making excuses that they have to ease themselves away from the fear of what if.
Yeah, of course. Because you already, you used to just get one roll of film into a camera. There's no backup there.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
You just get that's the thing. Yeah, I thought the same thing, and at the time, I did get a lot of questions. As what do you think about this? And are you going to be able to kind of stick with Nikon and blah blah? And it's just like, well, look, the camera slot, the card slot thing doesn't affect me at all because 9 times out of 10, I shoot tethered anyway. So. I don't need any card slots, to be fair, for most of the stuff that I do. So it really doesn't bother me at all.
Kirsten and I were talking not a couple of weeks ago about this very thing, and I asked you, didn't I, Kay? When was the last time an SD card actually failed on you?
Well, funnily enough, and back then I said never, and you know what? Last week one failed. Yeah, I kid you not.
Yeah.
So, but to be honest, that's the first SD card ever. That I think, to be honest, I think I still have the very first SD card I bought with the very first digital camera that I bought, actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it's still working.
I bet that's super fast to take the info off.
I think it's like a 2 gigabyte card, I think. But yeah. Let's go back to when, just after you shot your first wedding in Canada. By the way, I have a lot of family in Canada, so
Oh, nice.
Waving the flag.
Waving the flag here right now.
It's a beautiful part of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We were meant to go back actually this summer because my wife's Canadian too. So
nice.
So we were meant to go back to see family, and her family is from the same province as mine, and of course the whole COVID-19 thing is completely, scattered our plans. Yeah. So to bank off flights and move it to next year.
You'll get out there soon, buddy.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to when, you just shot your first wedding. You sort of caught the wedding bug, and then I take it you decided to return to the UK.
So I returned to the UK, and I knew that as soon as I go back to the UK, I didn't want to get a job doing something that I didn't really want to do. I really committed to pursuing my passion of being a wedding photographer. So that is exactly what I did. I took a year out and I worked on my composition, joined camera clubs, which is where I met some amazing people at the Watford Camera Club, like Debbie Ram, who I know has been on here before, who's amazing and one of my close friends. I had this amazing help by this government-funded organization called Wenta, who, because I'm a terrible business person, really, like most creatives really are deep down, they helped me create like a business plan, cash flow forecasting, helped me build a website and really get my head around a lot of the back end stuff and the important stuff really. So I spent a year working through a lot of the things I needed to do and started advertising myself as a wedding photographer. And I started photographing weddings, started picking up weddings, which is amazing. But by the end of the first year, I didn't make enough of an income to afford my cost of living, or what you call your personal survival budget. And I couldn't afford where I was living. So I had to declare myself homeless at the end of the first year. So I reached a crossroads at that point. I could have easily got a job, got some income coming in, or I could have, stayed firm and stayed committed and continued pursuing my dream. And this one quote by Tony Robbins, which, I love and I'm going to share right now. He says, if you want to take the island, you have to be prepared to burn the boats. And what he means by that is, if you want to take the island and you want to stay on the island, you have to remove the temptation of going back to the shore of safety. So you have to burn the boats to force yourself in a position where you're going to fight for what it is you really want to do. So I chose to burn my boats and I declared myself as homeless. I found accommodation at a local YMCA in Watford. And so I had a small room in the YMCA with a bed, a window, and a small desk. And I stayed there until I built myself a sustainable business, which I think took me about 8 months.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, I committed 110%.
So 8 months in a YMCA. What was that like?
First of all, I was super grateful to have somewhere where, I could work and focus on the business, because remember, that became my single primary focus to pursue my passion and dream to be a wedding photographer. It had its own unique set of challenges. It was a big building and there's a lot of people in there from all these different scenarios and, all these different walks of life. You've got victims of abuse, you've got addicts, you've got, people that, just come from some really unfortunate and unsavory positions. But I chose really just to focus, stay in my room, and just eat, sleep, and breathe photography, night and day. I would just work from morning to night, just working on my photography, my composition, and my business. I picked up a job working as a photographer, photographing nightclubs. So I use that as a platform to improve my lighting and my lighting techniques, how to light my subjects, how to light big rooms with, super high ceilings you can't bounce flash from. I worked so hard with that I became one of their top photographers, which is amazing. From there, I picked up some other amazing jobs where, just by networking and through my images, I started picking up some amazing clients like Hearst Publishing, and I did shots for Esquire and Harper's Bazaar and Red Magazine, Country Living Magazine, all while being a homeless photographer. So it was interesting having these amazing shoots, shooting people like Jeremy Renner and, Nick Hornby and all these amazing people. None of them knew, my story or, the situation I was in. But I just wanted to go to these jobs, present myself as the best possible photographer I could, come back to my little room with my little bed, my little desk, and just focus on the next day and focus one day at a time.
Abul, that's such an amazing story. I mean, it's really, it's so sad to hear that was the position that you were in at the start, but so many people could have folded at that point and not been able to get themselves out of it. But you did the complete opposite and focused, this is what I want and I'm going to get it. And 8 months, just 8 months to do something like that and to get yourself into a position where the business is viable is outstanding.
Did you have a backup, any kind of backup plan, or did you just go, right, I'm going to go all out for this, and if it's...
110% all out for this. There was no backup plan because, again, burning a boat means that you really remove any possibility of, safety. So I could have gone to my family's place. My mum was still upset that I put myself in that position, but I had to see and I had to know what 100% really looks like, what my 100% commitment really looks like. Some of my friends are still upset that I put myself in that position, but honestly, that was the best thing that I've done in terms of my business and establishing a work ethic that, I still continue today, and really just living photography all day, every day for 8 months. It was honestly, for a creative, it was a dream, just, in a kind of unfortunate scenario.
So I guess, is it fair to say that you taught yourself everything you knew, in a small bedroom in the YMCA in Watford?
Well, I wouldn't recommend that philosophy or that approach to everybody because I know we all have responsibilities.
Sure.
But over those 8 months, I looked at every opportunity and every time I went out as a way to practice my photography, as a way to improve my composition, like the nightclub jobs I used to do with my nightclub photography, a way to practice my lighting techniques, depth of field and photographing big groups, practice, journalistic photography, with people on the dance floor. So every opportunity I had to work on my photography, I jumped on it. And every time I had a job come through, whether it was a wedding or whether it was a commercial shoot or, for one of these amazing publications, I treated it like my last. So I knew that by treating it like my last, I would give it everything I had.
So with all the sort of highs during that time, I'm pretty sure there must have been some real lows there as well. Did you ever feel like giving up?
Yeah, there were some challenging times, especially being in a situation like that where you see people who are there for some really some really tragic reasons. It was very testing, but I think it was a great test to my own commitment, to committing to my own goals, and a great test to see for the first time, what, again, my 100% commitment really is, and what my best work ethic could really be. And I'm really happy to say that, I pulled through, I came out with a sustainable business. And although, I'm far from perfect now, I'm still working on my back end and my website and, my marketing, and my always conscious of my client experience. And I've made mistakes, but honestly, it was probably one of the most rewarding times, even if it was the most difficult.
So how did you manage to build your network when you were in that position, like you're living at the YMCA and you're going out to do client work? How did you manage to combine all these things and build your network?
So everything I did was orientated around photography. So one of the things I did was I looked for communities with, like-minded creatives. So I found a local camera club in Watford called the Watford Camera Club, WCC, which is where I met some amazing people who have become, some of my closest friends. And meeting people passionate about photography is just amazing. Because our family don't always enjoy what we do as much as we do, right? Our friends don't always understand our photography, Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
I'm with you on that one.
I bet. So meeting like-minded people that you can share with and push each other creatively with, it's great. And I would recommend that for everybody. So for anyone watching, if there's a local camera club to you, or if there's an online community to you with, like-minded photographers, go out on photo walks, go to these camera clubs, meet people that, will push you instead of, holding you back. Because if you really want something, you just have to ask yourself, how much do you want it?
Yeah, the thing about camera clubs is that I felt exactly the same. So when I moved to this area, when I first got married, I really didn't know anybody around here, and my wife actually suggested that I join a camera club, and and I looked around, and in actual fact, Watford was the first one that popped up, near to where I live. So. And what I found was, there were a few surprises there. I was not aware of the fact that there were so many competitions going on, or that there were actually competitions going on. I just didn't know that was a thing in a camera club. But the thing that I really found was that because you've got this large group of people all in one place, and a lot of them are really long-standing, really experienced photographers in particular fields. Some like really experienced landscape photographers, others like portrait photographers or wildlife photographers, and you come into a group of people like that, and you immediately think like, okay, landscape photography, I don't know very much about this. I'm going to go and talk to Steve, who's like extremely awesome at landscape photography, and you have all these people in one place, and we used to go to the pub. After the actual club meeting, and you just hang out and you just talk, photography. And if you wanted to know something about a particular type of photography or something, there'd always be that one person that you knew you had to speak to because they knew a lot more about this particular thing than you did. And of course, we all learn differently, but that's certainly for me, that's really helped me in the past to diversify and just learn about different types of photography. I spend a lot of time in a type of studio type of situation, where I can control everything. And so landscape photography, just as an example, is the one thing that has always sort of eluded me. And it's just a thing that I always thought like, man, I don't know how these people do it, I realized that getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and sitting in the field for hours, that kind of does it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love looking at landscape photography, but much like yourself, Kirsten, it's not something I've practiced, and it's not something I'm particularly passionate about, but I love looking at landscape images. So, I really tip my hat to those people that get up early in the morning and come back with an incredible image that, people like us just really appreciate.
Yeah, and it's such a great source of information. I think joining a camera club, and even if you're not into competing, I'm not into competing at all. That's not my bag. I totally appreciate other members, really being into that, and that's cool. And I don't mind listening to a judge, talking about images and stuff. That's all good. For me personally, there's so many other benefits to joining a club, though. So
absolutely. Well, the benefits there, because I'm very fortunate now where I work with some amazing photographers and have some incredible friends in the industry, like Scott Johnson, who's like a Fuji ambassador, and he's on board with the MPA and the SWPP. Adam Alex is one of my favorite photographers in the world, who's an incredible destination wedding photographer. He's won like every single award you can think of, from WPPI to SWPP. So, these guys have entered competitions. They love entering competitions.
Yeah.
Me, not so much. So I really prefer, and right now I tend to focus on my client experience, my business, my own work, my own composition. However, another benefit of joining the camera club is it was just so eye-opening to see images being entered into competitions and seeing how they're judged, understanding what the judges are looking for, listening to images get critiqued. I've learned so much from watching images being judged and being critiqued, and being inspired by so much of the work. and learning from other people's successes and other people's mistakes.
Yeah.
It's a great learning experience. Even if you don't enter, even just watching images be entered, that's so useful.
Exactly. That's why I quite like going to the competition evenings, where you just listen to the judge. And sometimes you fully agree with what the judge says, and sometimes you don't. But that's the whole thing about art, isn't it? It's totally subjective. So
it's all subjective, right? Absolutely, yeah. It's all subjective.
Yeah, and like you said, I've learned loads of stuff about different aspects of photography just by hearing somebody talk about it, and so I agree with you. I would absolutely recommend, if somebody's just starting out and they want to, get to meet like-minded people, camera clubs, and they are all over the place. By the way, there's between where I live and Watford, there's probably 3 different camera clubs between here and there. So
Just for those watching and listening who may not be particularly familiar with what a camera club is, so it sounds like there's competitions. What does a typical evening at a camera club consist of? Obviously the pub afterwards, but I'm assuming it's not a competition every single meeting.
No, so I haven't been to a camera club maybe in a few years now, to be honest. But it was a really integral part to my journey as a photographer. And actually, I owe a lot to the camera club and to the members there. And I've learned so much from being there. But what happens in camera clubs, week by week, is they might rotate with having different speakers coming on. Some amazing photographers from across the world might come to speak at your local camera club. They might have different assignments, like different competition shoots. So they might have a set subject, and set subject would be like architecture or happiness or children. So it's a great way to really push your creativity and to work to set subjects, which really helps. It does help improve your creativity and your composition. Other things they might do would be like have shoots at camera club, where they might set up like a reptile shoot on one day, or maybe like a portrait session on another day. So if you've got a good camera club who listen to what the members want, then honestly it's just so helpful to anyone that really is passionate about taking photos and wanting to get better.
And you get to know a lot of people, so you make a lot of friends. So it very quickly becomes very friendly. You do a lot of excursions. Like we do something called the Prime Lens Challenge, for example, where we go to a particular city, and the thing is that you're allowed to use one prime lens, and you get to shoot whatever you shoot on a day on the same prime lens. That's right, yeah. And then there's a bit of a competition, for a laugh afterwards. But that's a real challenge. I mean, you do one focal length. That's it. No zooming, nothing.
Absolutely,
it's like and it pushes you in different ways. So
actually sharing a little insight into how I work as a wedding photographer. I'm actually a prime lens shooter. So I completely agree with that. And I think having a prime lens on your camera body when you're shooting, especially as a wedding photographer, really makes you work hard for the shot. And I don't mean because you want to make yourself work harder unnecessarily, but it means that you don't get comfortable, having to zoom in and to zoom out, and being so disconnected, with like a 70-200 lens on there. I carry a 35 on one body and a 50 on the other, or maybe an 85 if I'm doing my couple session, for the portraits. But by having fixed focal lengths, if I really want a closer shot, I'll come up and I'll take a closer shot. And it will make me stay invested. It will make me stay focused and stay creative. And it just helps push me to stay on my toes for the full day.
Love that. I absolutely love that. It's a really nice way of approaching a day. How do you deal with those situations where perhaps you're not able to get as close to the action as you'd like? I don't know whether you go into the church, if it's a church wedding, whether you're going into the churches and taking photos during the service itself. How do you deal with that without a variable focal length?
Yeah, wedding photography can vary depending, from church to church, really. So some churches, which I'm sure don't allow photography during the ceremony.
Yeah.
Some might allow photography, during the entrance only, or some will give you the freedom just to move around, and they're so easygoing. So it really is, almost on a case by case or wedding by wedding basis. But for those situations where maybe the priest or, the person at the church might tell you, you can only stand here. You can't move from there. That's the one spot you can stay at. You have no choice, really. And the bride and groom will be well aware of, what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's always something to discuss with the bride and groom before the wedding happens. So now, like on my questionnaire or when I'm speaking to the bride, or the groom, before the wedding, I'd always remind them to speak to the church to make sure that weddings are allowed during the ceremony, and just to make sure that there's no restrictions during the ceremony. Because first of all, my job is to get them amazing photos. And if I'm restricted in any way, then, it's important for them to be aware that it's out of my hands. And I'll always do the best I can. But for those situations where I am kind of far back and I don't have much movement or freedom to move, during the ceremony, then I'm always just trying to think about the composition. So thinking about the full frame, trying to tell the story where maybe I can get framed with, the couple and the guests, just trying to make it work, because there's always a way to make it work. Just remember, the glass is always half full, right?
Yeah. You touched on there, consultation and, speaking with the bride and groom in advance, about restrictions that there might be. And I think this is something that doesn't get talked about all that much, is what is your process in the lead up to a wedding? And what do you kind of talk about in that first consultation or second consultation, however many that you do? I don't think a lot of people really go into detail about that kind of thing, but it's critical, absolutely critical, to make the day go as smoothly as possible and to enable you to get the best photos you can.
Absolutely. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all approach to creating a client experience for, for us as wedding creatives. I know people that are just purely journalistic. They'll have no contact with the bride and groom. There's no formal portraits done apart from group photos, and they'll just turn up with a camera and take some amazing images. One of them that comes to mind is just an incredible photographer. But they're shooting from a pure journalistic approach, whereas other photographers I know, they're very informal and, have a very hands-on approach. Me, I think I approach my wedding client experience trying to give them as an informal experience as possible. So by that, I want them to know that I'm approachable. And just to give a couple of insights into how I work, sharing my personal process is, for example, one of the things I'll do is I'll create a WhatsApp group with a bride and groom. By creating a WhatsApp group, it just shows them that I'm not sending them emails and being so formal. It's a very personal approach, and I want to establish that from the very beginning. So they know that if they have a question or a thought, they can just send me a message on WhatsApp. And it's a great way just to have fun and just stay in contact. And, it's so much easier for me to deal with than having to, be at the desk and just reply to emails. I know that some people think, well, creating WhatsApp groups for clients, that's a bit too informal, or, you're opening yourself up to so much contact. But actually, you'll find, from my experience, I find that the more opportunity I give and the more I open myself up, the less they contact me and the less they feel like they have to, because it works, because they feel relaxed and because they feel that he's there, he's on WhatsApp, he's added us like we're a friend. So actually it works out really well for me.
So this is the thing I always feel like when I hear people talk about sort of automated systems, because there's a whole bunch of different automated kind of systems that take care of all the, the reminder emails and this and that and the other, and they send the contracts out and blah. And all this happens, you just start the whole process literally in the beginning and just get scheduled out and everything happens. And I always think okay, so from a business perspective, I can totally understand this. It speeds things up and makes them more reliable and all this, all the rest of it. But then I kind of think, but it's such potentially it's such an impersonal approach. And especially with something like weddings, I've always felt that it's such a personal thing. I mean, not least because I got married myself not too long ago, 3 years ago. Is it 3? Was it? I don't know. Can't remember. Yeah, 3 years ago.
Congratulations.
Something like that.
We can edit that, Kay.
Someone's on the sofa tonight.
Well, yeah. But so I really like that. that WhatsApp approach. I can see that working really well.
And I'm willing to bet, right, that you'll get, a one sentence message from them if they've got a question. Whereas if they had done that in email, probably 10 different things might have come out and you'd end up with a couple of paragraphs.
Exactly. And if you think about your mindset when you're sending an email to a client, like you're trying to be as formal and as comprehensive as possible, and you're doing it in a way where you're conscious, even slightly, that someone could come back to this later, right? And it's very formal. But if you're like, when I create my WhatsApp groups to my client, it's just so casual and so relaxed. It reduces and minimizes any formality, with me and my client, without breaking too much of a barrier, because there's nothing overly invasive. But it just really shows them and gives them that security and confidence that he's there for us whenever we need him. He's just on WhatsApp.
And I love the idea. It's such a simple thing, but they know you've read the message, right?
Yeah, there you go.
It's so simple, but it's modern. It's how things work today.
Yeah, and it's just as easy to reply back. Yes, straight away. Just one hand on the phone, and there you go, job done.
Yeah. One hand on the phone whilst you're driving? Maybe not. Let's not do that.
You could dictate if you wanted to.
Yes, I guess you could. So, okay, so let's come back to you being, building your business out of a room at the YMCA. So when you got to the point where you took the step to get your own place, what did that feel like?
Wow, that's a good question. Coming out of the situation I was in, that hostel at the YMCA, and getting my own accommodation, you would think that there's a sense of relief, or there's a sense of accomplishment, and there is a little. But actually, what really happens, more so than that, which people wouldn't realize, is you feel a little more pressure, because now you have a little more responsibility. There's more overheads. So that work ethic that I established during my 8 months in that position actually just evolved and was just in full force when I came out. So nothing changed when I came out. If anything, I probably had to work a little harder.
So why Gracious Photography? What's the story behind the name?
I'm quite a spiritual person, and those that know me know that I'm somewhat introverted sometimes, but always humble and hopefully somewhat gracious. And I think by creating the name Gracious Photography, it's just a constant reminder to where I've been, what I've done, and just trying to keep that humility moving forward, whatever happens and whatever successes I have.
So now you set up your business, you've managed to move into your own place, and you got your business to where you want it to be, and then coronavirus hits.
Yeah.
What goes through your head at that point?
Wow, I don't know where to start. So I guess you can kind of tell I'm a little focused and a little driven when it comes to my business, right? I might have given that away a little. So I photographed this incredible wedding in the Cotswolds about, I think, 4 years ago now. I was second shooting for Adam Alex, who I mentioned earlier. And this venue I photographed was just amazing. It was called The Manor. It's an exclusive venue, and it was just breathtaking. And exploring the Cotswolds around, seeing that they have such an appreciation for the arts, I just fell in love with the area. So I moved to the Cotswolds. I moved to Cheltenham to establish my business and establish myself there as a Cotswold wedding photographer. Because the Cotswolds is kind of unique, where you get a lot of destination weddings from people coming from like the States, or from Europe, to get married in the Cotswolds, in the country, in the UK. So that was my goal, to establish myself there. And I had been there for about 2.5 years. I've been so blessed that I've managed to establish some amazing relationships. I'm the preferred supplier for some amazing venues like Sudeley Castle, another venue called Barnes and Yard. So everything's going amazing. And then COVID-19 happened. So wedding photography is, I believe, is recession proof because people will always get married. Weddings are always happening, but it's not COVID-19 proof.
Mm-hmm.
So during this lockdown, my mum is high risk. She had severe pneumonia last year.
Mm.
So I made the careful decision to leave Cheltenham to come back to Watford to stay with my mum for the meantime until things start picking up again. That way, to look after my mum. It's also going to help as a bonus as well to save on my overheads as well. So what I'm doing now while I'm here is I'm just really just spending my time going back to the drawing board, reevaluating my business, reevaluating my workflow, looking at my whole client experience from the initial point of contact, looking at all the points of contact I have with each client, all the way up to the delivery of the products and of the wedding images.
Fantastic work. So sometimes a situation like this can actually turn out to be an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I feel, especially when initially after the initial shock of like thinking like, oh, okay, it's all going down the pan. My business, it's like, it's over. And then, a few days later, you kind of start thinking, well, actually, hang on a minute, this might be an opportunity to streamline things, work on, you mentioned you were working on the back end of your website, for example, and to just improve your workflow, the client experience, think about marketing. This is something I hear a lot. A lot of people say, yeah, I really got into marketing whilst I was doing this. What else have you been up to during lockdown then?
So I've not been very active on social media, much at all really over the last few years. Most of my work comes through recommendations and word of mouth, which is such a huge blessing for me.
Yeah. So
I've not really had to depend on advertising myself or on social media, but that is something I would like to change. So there's someone called Melissa Love, who's an amazing person in the wedding industry, who has created a platform for creatives in the wedding industry called The Marketing Fix. And she has these online courses where she will help you with your business blueprint. So going back to the original blueprint, looking at your goals, your philosophy, your taglines, all the way through to like Facebook advertising, your VIP client experience, and really evaluating your whole business and your business workflow. So I've been focused on that, which has been amazing. And I'm seeing some great results from that already, which is great. Other things I'm working on is just updating my workflow. I have been working with a stationery designer to look at my packaging for my client experience. So I really am committed to thinking about my client experience from, again, that first point of contact, from how I meet them, how I make them feel, what they see for my work, how my albums are for them, making sure everything's consistent and up to date with my style, which has evolved, has become, my style's very different to what it was, 3-4 years ago.
And just because I'm an absolute sucker for efficiency and things like that, what kind of things have you adjusted with your general workflow that you've probably not been able to put much of it into practice just yet, but what kind of things have you changed?
So one of the biggest things for me is I've been using something called Studio Ninja, which is like a CRM tool, which has been amazing. So you've got the potential to like auto flow your wedding workflow if you need to. But what it does, it's just the one place that my whole business, is kind of centered around. So from Studio Ninja, I can send out a quote to a client, and on there I can attach my welcome pack. From there, they can look at my terms and conditions. If they accept that, then they can go to make a payment, which will take credit card payment through Stripe or PayPal or whatever. It will have a questionnaire that will auto-populate as well. It just brings up everything I need for them. So instead of having to send out, and create different PDFs and do 10 things at once, really, I just go to one place and it just automates it all in one spot, which is amazing for me.
Nice.
So that has saved me so much time and has allowed me to really focus on other parts of my business, like my wedding stationery, or focus on my website and, trying out a few new things that I'm looking into.
Tell me about the stationery. What have you been doing there?
So when I meet my clients, for the first time, prospective clients. So they've contacted me. They're looking at wedding photographers. It's really important for us as creatives to stand out from everybody else. And I don't mean by looking at them and replicating what everybody's doing, but by being authentic to yourself. And I found that the more authentic I am to myself, the more I actually stand out from everyone else. So when I first started, I would always look up to see what other photographers are doing. How are they presenting to their clients? What are they doing? But actually, I'm in a good place now where I just look at my clients and I think about, what would I like to receive? How would I like to be treated as a client? And that's where I've really made the most growth. So when I first meet clients, I've got my little boxes over here. I'll show you. When I first meet clients, I'll give them print packs. So like I'll show them a couple of recent weddings so they can kind of, get an idea of not just what my hero images on my website are, but what a full wedding looks like from me as a wedding photographer, to really get them inspired and to get them thinking, yeah, I'd love him to tell my story on the wedding day. I'll give them my welcome pack, and by that, I'll think about how I'm going to present the welcome pack. So I'd be thinking about my branding and my logo. So when I'm thinking about my stationery, I'm thinking about every point of contact I have with my client. I want that to be unique, and I want that to stand out from everybody else, because I really want to create the wow factor as many times as I can at every point of dealing with, each of my bride and grooms.
God, I love that. Particularly those photo packs.
Thank you so much.
What a great idea to just, if I'm a bride or groom, I'm going to look at those and go, oh God, just imagine if that was our wedding.
Right.
And they're going to get that immediately by looking at that, right?
Right. I'm giving my secrets away, man, but, I'm an open book. But, if you think about it, right, what's the price of a pack of 6x4 prints or 7x5 prints? Like, how much does that cost? And if you think about the cost of that and the return on the investment you're going to get from picking up a wedding, honestly, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at picking up, your perfect client, if you understand who your perfect client is and you're marketing to your perfect client, invest into that. Try to make them feel special and make them understand, who you are and how passionate you are about what it is you're doing.
Yeah, love it. And just take those photo packs, if that turns over the course of a year, turns one inquiry into a wedding that perhaps otherwise may not have come off, it's already paid for itself in all sorts of ways. It's amazing.
More than that, I guarantee you, if you think about a client that comes to see us and we meet them at a coffee shop, at like a Starbucks or Cafe Nero or wherever, and we meet them for a wedding, I guarantee you they're going to be cautious. It's a big investment for them. They're going to be looking at least 2 to 3 wedding photographers or videographers before they make a decision. Now, how many of those photographers do you think are actually giving them something to come away from the meeting with, like giving them a print pack or thinking about the stationery that they're giving them on the day, or how they're presenting their welcome brochure or their welcome pack? If you can take that step up to show them something that no one else is doing, showing them how professional you are and how passionate you are about not just your photography, but about your business and your service to them, they will feel that and they will appreciate that and they will remember that. And that will give you that little wow factor that you need for you and your business.
What's the one thing that you've learned about yourself in this lockdown?
That's a good question. What's the one thing I've learned about myself during this lockdown? One thing I've learned about myself during this lockdown is that I can't switch off. I felt very different and unusual, not having something to do all day, every day, which is very unlike me because, I think you understand my work ethic and what I do. So I found myself having a lot more free time. So I've been playing guitar a little. I've been playing a little PlayStation. I've been spending more time with the family, making food at home for the family and taking photos of food. And I've been, doing stuff I've really enjoyed doing. And even though I know that my experiences has really cultivated a really strong discipline in my workflow. I think actually that perhaps I needed this time to just be able to relax and just enjoy things, and maybe enjoy a little downtime too, which I've not really been good at, to be honest, over the last 4 or 5 years.
It's taken me weeks to get to that conclusion, I have to say. Maybe without the help of my wife, maybe I would have never reached that conclusion. But I've also sort of realized that sometimes I just have to actually chill the heck out. It's like it's this thing. Like I started. I spoke to Nick about this in the last episode. I started something called bullet journaling, right? Which is it's a great way. I love it. It's a great way for me to organize my day and my week, and and everything that I do. And it's as part of bullet journaling, you can track certain things about your day or your week or so. And so one of the things, and you can track things like, I track like things like water intake and how much coffee I drink and blah, blah, and whether or not I'm exercising and this and that and the other. But I also track 8 a.m. starts. Because what I used to do, believe it or not, like I'm one of these people, when I wake up really early, and when I wake up, I'm up. That is it. I can't like laze about.
Once the brain switches on, that's it. Yeah.
That's it. And so what would happen, would be like, I'd wake up at 5:30, I'd be up, I'd go downstairs, throw on a computer, I start editing photos, I sit on the couch, throw on some like, some ridiculous like National Geographic, like, 57th dive to the Titanic or something, running in the background, whatever.
The PJs.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd be like editing photos and doing this and then the other. And then, eventually my wife would come down. She'd be like, "Oh, how long have you been here?" I'm like, 2 hours, I've already done this and then the other. And so for the last few weeks, I've been tracking 8 o'clock starts, because I figured, you know what? If I start working at 8 a.m., that's fine, man. That's cool, And so what that's meant is now, when we wake up in the morning, my wife and I would do a little meditation together. And I have to say, it's really been so beneficial just to take out that little time and not worry about anything else or any tasks that I've got to do on this day. Because I know, 8 a.m. is when it starts for me. And because you don't have that routine in the morning, like the commute to work or to an office or to a studio or anything like that. You're not at home, and that's my studio. It's really kind of, it slowed things down in a weird way. It's actually helped me to organize myself better. So now I feel I have more quality time than I had before. And it's a really, I don't know, it's a really useful thing for me, because my brain's always like running at 180 miles an hour. I always think,
welcome to the mind of a creative. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, exactly. It's always like, I always say like, well, it's the creating, the creation process that does it for me. Once the project is finished, I don't like to hang around. I like to just already think about the next thing that I'm going to do. And, but the one thing I've learned is that slowing down sometimes can actually be a much greater benefit to yourself than always like going at it at like 100 miles an hour. So on many levels, I feel like it's been really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great thing you're doing, because I think slowing down and maybe listening to paying attention to your thoughts and what's coming up. Sometimes you'll find little gems in there that maybe they're telling you something you should be doing that maybe you haven't done, like maybe reconnecting with friends or maybe family, or doing something that you put up for so long, but
that's really amazing. Like, in the first, I don't know, like in the first 2 weeks of lockdown, I think I've spoken to more people than I would have ordinarily spoken to in like a year.
There you go.
Like people from all over the world. Because obviously I have a family abroad and everything, and I went to an international college, so I went to school with people from all over the shop, and just reconnecting with people was just a great experience. I've talked to people that I hadn't talked to in 20 years. So it's like,
I think that I think this time is really going to make some changes moving ahead. Like, I think the way we socialize and the way we've opened ourselves up to our friends on a deeper level, establishing this as a new habit, I think that's just a beautiful thing to do. Like these weekly calls that we have with our friends on Zoom or on Skype or FaceTime, it's just a beautiful way to, to check in with our friends and to ask a question like, how are you doing? How are you really doing?
Exactly.
Which, we don't always do. We would just go around and have a cup of tea, talk about good things. But now we're asking really meaningful conversations, and we're showing so much more compassion than we ever have before. So I think there's going to be a lot of positives coming out of this.
Okay, so Abul, photo studios have been able to open up again fairly recently. Have you been on any shoots already, or is it still starting up slowly for you now?
Yeah, because I've chosen to keep my mum company, who's shielding because she's high risk. I've really had to be very mindful of my contact and my social interaction. So I've not been able to go out much. However, last week I did my first shoot, or my first paid commission shoot for a friend who's opened up a bakery in Watford, actually, which was really cool.
Great.
So that was nice, taking some photos of some gorgeous bread, which smelled amazing, and pastries, which went really well. But yeah, I've not been as active as I would like to have been photo-wise.
Drop us the link to that later, because I love bakeries.
I do. Will do. Yeah, we'll do.
Hey, come on. German with Canadian roots. Come on.
Oh, man. There is no better smell in the world or on the planet than waking up to the smell of fresh bread in the house.
Oh.
Best smell in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe bacon. I'd tap onto that as well.
Oh, bacon. So, do you have any regrets?
Good question. I think some of the lessons I've learned along the way, thinking about where I am now to maybe where I was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or even 5 years ago, would be that I don't doubt myself anymore. I stopped looking at what other photographers are doing, looking at how they're working, what they're putting out, or how they're, treating their clients. I stopped doing that. So I spent so much time when I was establishing myself as a photographer and as a professional business, as a wedding photographer. I spent so much time looking at other photographers, going through Facebook and looking at their websites. And honestly, it's just to no end. Where I am now, thinking about my clients and how I'd like to be treated, if I was a client, I think that's so much more fruitful to my, to my client experience. So the only thing I would probably regret is I wish I learned this lesson sooner, to stop comparing myself to other photographers and just learn to be my authentic self and just learn to embrace it.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's just getting into the wedding photography industry?
One of the first thing that comes to mind is find yourself a mentor. I know we live in a time where, we're so entitled, everything is so easy to find with YouTube and instructional, videos on anything. If you want to be a master of something, you can just, learn from home, right? But there is nothing like finding a mentor. So I've been very lucky in that I've had a couple of mentors along my journey. I think I mentioned a couple of names earlier, Scott Johnson and Adam Alex. And having a mentor where someone can honestly give you some feedback on your work, tell you, what to look out for, show you, what they're doing, and talk to you about your pricing, and help you with, everything. It's just priceless. So if you think about the, old classic wedding photography, where, you'd be assisting a big photographer, I've heard stories where, some incredible photographers I know now started by just asking a professional photographer they could just take their bags to shoots, and then they started shooting, and then they started, second shooting for them, and now they're incredible photographers.
Yeah, it's like making tea in a recording studio.
Right, yeah. And to be honest, I started mentoring. I started being mentored by one photographer by saying to them, much the same. And it's just been one of the best things I could have done. So for anyone starting out, finding yourself a mentor, someone whose work you like, because there are so many different styles, but maybe finding a style of photography that you like, that you connect with, and knowing if the person can give you real honest feedback about your work and help push you to be the best version of you. that you can be, that is priceless. Yeah. So find a mentor would be my first choice.
Fantastic. Well, so we've come to the sort of the last segment of today's podcast. So every week, Nick and myself, we set ourselves a little challenge. So we had video challenges in the past and photo challenges. This week, our challenge was to take a selfie. So
this would be fun.
Yeah, this will be fun. So we took a number of photos, and of course, as always, we will show them to you, and then that'll give you an opportunity to give us some constructive feedback. Because as much as we love to learn from what our guests are telling us, also from a photographic point of view, it's a great learning experience, an opportunity for us. Actually, because we like to push ourselves and we like to push each other as well.
Love that. Absolutely love that.
And it really gives us something to do. Something else to do. Sometimes it takes over most of the week, really, but cool.
You can't rush perfection, man.
Nope.
Yeah.
Okay, so Nick, why don't we start with your photo this time?
What a cool image. That's I really like the composition here, actually. So, like, you've got the lens on the right third of the image. You're almost actually really doing to the rule of thirds, actually. Seeing your face in the camera lens. It's very clever. That's what we call like a subframing technique, or a frame within a frame. It's a really strong composition. I like this.
Cool, man.
It's a very interesting image. It has a little wow factor on there. I like it. It's very cool.
Yeah, I really like the colors, Nick. There's this bluishness about it, which is like, in the top left, like your t-shirt, and then it comes out in the lens, and the reflections in the lens have like this blue tint, and then of course in the actual lens itself, you've got this really nice color. So it's and it goes really well against your skin tone as well. So because there's this orange and teal thing happening in there.
There is.
It's the balance of color there, like the balance of tones as well. Like you've got the warm, you've got the cold, the blue. So I presume that you must have had this on a mirror, maybe.
It's actually so the setup was it's actually a glass table.
Okay.
Quite a small one, and then so the lens was simply sat on top of that. I'm laying underneath the glass table. And then it was so the way I ended up setting it up was I had this little fella behind me. I'm not sure if it's going to show in the free frames, but it's a little Star Wars kind of figure that I laid down to try and position underneath the table so that I was getting my the right look in the right position on the lens, so I could capture that. It took a bit of moving, stuck a bit of tape down where it was, and then kind of laid there. What I ended up actually having to do was I took the shot, and I couldn't get myself to be in exactly the right position. I was almost there, but I wasn't totally happy. I'd end up being slightly wonky or slightly off frame.
I guess trying to,
So what you're actually looking at here is a slight composite. I shot it exactly as you're looking. So basically, the whole lens on the top there is from a secondary photo.
Okay.
And it's purely because practically it didn't look quite right with the position I needed to be in. So basically what would be my my right eye would be right up to the lens. To be able to get myself reflected
to get that,
in the lens.
because you'd have to be under the focal lens.
So it didn't look quite right. It would have looked not nearly as good a photo. So I took it as a second picture to just try and get that composition just to look right.
See, it's an interesting image, and it gets my attention. And I think, which you'll probably learn, from camera clubs and competitions, that if an image gets your attention for like more than 2 or 3 seconds, then you kind of won, because you've got something there, and you've definitely got something here with this image. Because at first, my mind's trying to work out what's happening here. Is this in a mirror? Because I'm conscious that your face is supposed to be directly under the lens for you to be on the lens like that, but it's not clear to me. It doesn't even it's not even on my radar that this could potentially be a composition. It's really well done. I love the balanced space around the lens, top and bottom. It's nicely on the rule of thirds to the right. You beautifully subframed yourself on the upper right third, almost perfectly. I love the contrast around you. It's so lovely, beautifully framed. And plus you've got the layer and the depth to the image where you're in the background. Even though you're out of focus, I still get it. So it's a really strong image. Well done.
There's actually, that's not a crop either. That's exactly as it was framed.
Cool. Was that like with a 50 mil?
Yeah. Exactly what it was. It was a nifty 50.
Nifty 50, yeah. That looks like that sort of focal length. Great image, buddy. Well done.
Yeah, cheers, pal.
I love the way that your head really falls out of focus. It's a really smooth kind of blur. Which is
the depth of field is lovely. Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, cool.
Fun image. That's cool.
Appreciate it. And well, the light you're seeing in that lens is actually the light dome, reflecting through.
But it's really brought out some nice colours, actually, with the UV coated glasses on the lens. So it's worked out to your favour. So it's
really
great.
Has. The only bit of editing that really happened on it, other than colour, was removing dust and little bits of that were on the lens that just distracted from it.
Did you use a speed light for this, or
yes,
constant light?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was a speed light inside a light dome. It was kind of off to the top right. It's really quite close because I wasn't quite getting the power from the speed light that I wanted. And I left that all identical when I took the second shot for me being underneath.
It's good. You see, the viewer looking at this image, they go straight to the strongest contrast part of the image, which is the lens and the black, and then you in the middle, beautifully subframed, or it's really well done.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. I enjoyed doing it. It was good fun.
Yeah, I enjoy looking at it. It's good.
So, Kersten, let's have a look at.
Let me switch over yours. Now. Hey, there he is. That's cool. That's a cool portrait,
isn't it?
Yeah. I like the composition. I like how you're kind of going in towards the upper right corner. You've got a nice space, balanced space, top and right to the image. The lighting's great, actually. You've really nailed the lighting, because again, my eyes is drawn to the lightest part of the image here, which is your face, which means that you've really nailed the lighting here. So that's great. And it's so apt right now for what's happening right now, right? With the virus and this whole lockdown and pandemic, and that startling look on your eye, which is actually very fitting for what you're wearing. And again, for the time, that we're going through right now. I also really like the background and the texture you've given to this to almost look like an old film photo. It's very cool. It's very cool. And you've chosen like a muted color, which kind of works with that background, which leaves the N95 mask to really almost be center stage behind those pretty blue eyes of yours, buddy. It's good. They're really good. I can see just through my eye that you've dodged and burned yourself, because there's a little dodging and burning around your outline.
Okay, so interestingly enough, that is actually that's sort of a rim light. So that was an interesting effect actually that happened. So that's so there's a number. Well, it's a two light. It's basically a two light setup. So you've got the key light, obviously. There's another speed light to the back right of me, just hitting
I can see
me
where
from
you're just filling in and you're highlighting around the hood. Yeah.
Because the original intention was actually just to totally blend that into darkness. Then as I was experimenting around with it, it didn't really look the way I wanted it to look. And so I kind of wanted to have this really kind of almost like grungy kind of feel to it, where it's it's got a bunch of like grungy textures on it. And,
it feels grungy. No, it does. I think that's a good word. Yeah. It does. It's got a lot of things going for it. Like the zip leads the eye as like, a clear implied line leading up to your face, to the portrait. And the thing about portraits, one of the most important things about a nice portrait is connection with your eyes. Yeah. And man, you are connecting with that camera right there with those big eyes of yours. It's a good portrait, man. It's cool.
And the thing there was really to kind of just convey this sort of, the situation that we're in at the moment. I mean, on one hand, of course, we're going to like wear masks and everything, but also, it just feels like the world feels kind of grungy right now. Everything's just a bit tense and edgy, and it's like things are not as running as comfortably smooth as they would normally do, and it's just kind of trying to convey that. And maybe, I mean, the fact that I picked the Jets, the New York Jets hat as well, it's not a team that's having an easy ride ever.
Absolutely, yeah. They had a tough time over in New York. Your lighting's really nice here, by the way, which I haven't touched on. Cool. I can see you have, looks like a softbox maybe, because I can see in your eye just a slight reflection of the light.
It's like an octobox.
Yeah, you've really lit yourself up very nice, because I know wearing a hat could be a little tough, actually, to make sure that light spills onto your eye under the hat. But you've done it perfectly, almost very Rembrandt, actually, with a hat. So that's really tough to do. So well done there, buddy.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to get under the brim of the hat.
Yeah,
sure.
But you nailed that. That's good. Yeah. And your eyes is very symbolic to what everyone's feeling now, like you were saying. So good job.
Yeah, exactly. It was a kind of the look of sheer like panic. I mean, and I think the title of the photo was like going shopping or something like that. Because honestly, I mean, that's like you go shopping. I mean, maybe not so much now, but certainly like for the first few weeks. Of lockdown, it was literally that sort of sense of sheer panic, just going to the grocery store. You know,
absolutely.
Hey, I'm just gonna go and buy bread and eggs.
It's the only place I look when I first open this image is straight to the eyes, and then the second thing that I noticed straight away is the combination of colours is perfect. That red, green, blue, and then with the black, the kind of black stroke grey, smoky style background. Really, really works well for me. And and then once I've got past that, the next thing I think of is zombie movie. And
Walking Dead.
That's true. Yeah, and that's sort of part of the experience when you go shopping. And everybody's wearing masks and everybody's gonna stay meters apart, and everybody's scared. And especially in the beginning, I remember like the first few times I went to the grocery store, and like you turn around the corner to go into an aisle, and there's somebody coming your way, and they see you from the other end of the aisle, and you can see the sheer panic in their faces, in their eyes, just because there's another human being has just entered the space 10 meters away. And it was just not a pleasant experience at all.
It makes shows like The Walking Dead a little more believable now, doesn't it?
Right? Exactly. Who would have? Look, I mean, like rewind a year. If anybody told you a year ago that we were going to be in this situation, you would have said no chance in hell. Yeah, like absolutely. This is a badly written, like apocalypse movie. You know what I mean?
You're like, you're having me on. Just stop that. I'm not buying it. Yeah,
exactly. Forget about it. So it's like to actually live in these extraordinary times is just boggles the mind. And at the same time, I also feel that it's because it's been going on for such a long time, and we have a tendency to normalize things, I think, and then you think like, hang on, this isn't normal. Like this is not normal at all. This should never be normal.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we've got one more photo, and that's a photo that we made when we were doing another shoot. In fact, our first shoot outside of, or like towards the end of lockdown, as it were.
Oh,
and
cool.
we kind of we thought we'd just jump in and do some stuff for our Facebook page.
It's a really nice image. It's cool. It's so beautifully balanced with your almost very serious look, Kersten, and then Nick's very kind of playful, fun expression. I really like it. It's very clever how you've got the image actually on the back of the camera too. Lighting here is beautiful. You've really lit both yourselves up so well. Like, I'm going to guess that this is a composite, but it's actually, this could easily have been both together, but just the way the lighting is, I'm pretty sure that you've composited this together. Because the lighting's so beautifully done. We've got the main key light, you've got like a fuel light just behind, and it's both perfect on the both of you. It's a cool image.
So Nick, was it a composite?
Well, no, it wasn't.
No, no. Really?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I tell you what, this is it's a massive octobox.
Because if it's not a composite, then it must have been a big.
It's huge. Yeah, it's huge. It's like, I don't know, it's like 6 foot,
it's like
8 foot,
it's like
something
the
like
size of a car. It is massive.
Yeah, it's huge.
Wow.
And it's really close to us as well. And it's just that light that it just wraps itself around you. It's just beautiful.
Very cool.
I love that thing for kind of 3/4 full length portraits. Oh, It's just beautiful.
Right.
And then there's two sort of room lights just lighting up from the left and the right. And that's it.
Nice.
Really.
Did you need light on the background at all?
That is actually still from the key light.
Very nice.
So
it's so balanced across the whole image, actually.
So that
Good.
background, by the way, that's it's a kind of a textile kind of background. It's got a slightly lighter area in the middle, so it does help. When you're not lighting, it does help kind of just creating that almost that sort of vignette sort of vibe, on this one. So it's
it looks like a nice fabric backdrop. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fabric. That's the word.
Yeah.
Looking for,
Yeah, cool image. Yeah, very cool.
Cool. So that was this week's challenge.
Nice.
We have. I should just actually just say this again. We have a sort of a public challenge that's happening at the moment. It's a photo challenge. So the subject is animals or pets. So take a photo of your pet, a cat, dog, could be anything. If you own a llama, take a picture of your llama. If that's what you're into. Send it in to us. You can email it to camerashakepodcast@gmail.com or send it us via Facebook Messenger or send us a pigeon. That's also cool. Whichever way you want, that's fine. I think the deadline is the 30th. What is it? June? Yeah, it's the 30th of June. I had to think there for a second. Is it July already? I don't know. 30th of June. Get any kind of animal picture into us, and we're going to have a look at it, and we're going to invite the winner onto the podcast. So that'll be fantastic to talk to whoever you are next month during a podcast, and just have a listen to how you created that picture. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, man.
Folks, we've come to the end of this week's podcast. Again, massive thank you to this week's guest, Abul Shah. It was an absolute education and a great window into the business of wedding photography. And, I think it's phenomenal. Not only what you do now, but also how you got there in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's extremely inspiring. And I wish you the very best for the future. And I hope your mom is fine and, you can get back into it, as soon as possible, really.
Honestly, thank you so much for having me on this cool channel. Thank you as well, Nick. It's been fun, man. And, I'm an open book and I'm always happy to help. And I'm just happy to share my process because I think sharing really is caring. So I think being able to share my process, if it helps even a single person out there, I'm certainly happy to do it.
So you've been listening to the Camera Shake podcast with me, Kersten and Nick Kirby. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, please do us a favor and subscribe to the Camera Shake podcast over on YouTube or head over and drop us a like on Facebook. Until next Thursday, that's it, folks.